Well, I want to stay in the R&D, but I want to switch it over a little bit into, let's say, smaller and medium sized companies that don't necessarily, they're not necessarily invested in tech, and now they're starting to get there, and now you have to bring the R&D, which is gonna, it's kind of like for them blowing money in a way. It's like burning cash. How will you sit down with a company that doesn't do R&D, and how will you convince them that this is something that they should put resources into?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different arguments. I mean, one, I think you do have to have the right culture for it. I think a company that tries to invest in R&D without a culture of innovation and without a culture of evolving, it's not going to solve a problem,
Yes.
right? You really can't throw money at this and solve it that way. But I think assuming that ingredient is there, I think there's a couple ways to do R. There's probably more than a couple, but there's a few different ways of doing R&D, right? I think one common way is really R&D function, looking at your core competency and seeing how you evolve it. And then maybe another lever is, if we're talking evolution against core competency, are we talking 1 to 3, or are we talking 5 to 10 years out? And the way in which you answer that question is ultimately going to really dictate the success language you create around your R&D function. And so I think as you start to answer those questions, you then start to see, okay, well, how is R&D different than project solutions or my innovation team? And I think ultimately, I think there's an argument to be made that project solutions and innovation is R&D, just at a different timetable, right? Whether it's 6 to 12 months out, or 6 to 18 months out, versus 3 to 5, 5 to 10 years out. And so I think once you have some of those questions figured out and aligned around your company vision, then you can look at investment. But I think ahead of that, I think you risk throwing money at a problem that you truly don't really understand what you're potentially solving for.
Yeah, you can efficiently get to efficiently get to a bad ends if you're really not paying attention to where you're headed, right? That's the
Right.
classic.
I think even you look at some ways in which I think the GCs are investing in R&D is through M&A, right? And whether it be, buying companies or investing in different startups, there's a lot of different ways you can do that. But ultimately, it has to have a common thread back to, what are you trying to solve for? And I think I have seen that not be alignment there, and the issues that it causes.